Of all the strange weather stories I have read over the last few years, I remember that of the Devil's Footprints above all. It happened exactly 160 years ago, on the night of the 8th of February, 1855. It is a mystery of Sherlockian proportions. It remains unsolved to this day. The start of 1855 was unusually cold. The temperatures remained around freezing from January until March. Many rivers were frozen, among them the Exe and the Teign in Devon. Too cold for a thaw, each winter shower added to the mass of snow, creating the conditions for the story that follows. The best place to begin is with a letter written to the editor of the Exeter and Plymouth Gazette. Sir, Thursday night, the 8th of February 1855, was marked by a heavy fall of snow, followed by rain and boisterous wind from the east, and in the morning frost. The return of daylight revealed the ramblings of some most busy and mysterious animal, endowed with the power of ubiquity, as its footprints were to be seen in all sorts of unaccountable places, on the tops of houses, narrow walls, in gardens and courtyards, enclosed by high walls and palings, as well as in the open fields. The creature seems to have frolicked about through Exmouth, Littleham, Lympstone, Woodbury, Topsham, Starcross, and Teignmouth. There is hardly a garden in Lympstone where his footprints are not observable, and in this parish he seems to have gamboled about with inexpressible activity. Its tracks appear more like that of a biped than a quadruped, and the steps are generally 8 inches in advance of each other, though in some cases 12 or 14. The impression of the foot closely resembles that of a donkey's shoe, and measures from 1.5 inches to, in some cases, 2.5 inches across, here and there appearing as if the foot was cleft, but in generality of its steps the impression of the shoe was continuous and perfect. In the center, the snow remains entire, merely showing the outer crust of the foot, which therefore must have been convex. The creature seems to have advanced to the doors of several houses, and then to have retraced its steps, but no one is able to discern the starting or the resting point of this mysterious visitor. Everyone is wondering, but no one is able to explain the mystery. The poor are full of superstition, and consider it little short of a visit from Satan himself or his imps. The prints stretched for between 40 to 100 miles around the South Devon coastline, and it was the unusual cloven hoof-like shape of the marks of suggested a link with Satan. A cloven hoof was such as well-known characteristic of the devil, a detail absorbed into popular poetry and art. Daniel Defoe had even written an essay of the extraordinary appearance of the devil, and particularly for Truman's Exeter Flying Post. The story was an excitement worthy of the Dark Ages, and they published a piece on the foot tracks of a most strange and mysterious description. In Dawlish, a group of tradesmen were so unnerved that they armed themselves with guns and bludgeons, and on the morning of the 9th of February set off in pursuit of the tracks. They walked from Dawlish to Luscombe, Dawlish Water and Oaklands. At length, after a very long and weary search, they returned, as wise as they set out. Within a fortnight, the story of the mysterious footprints was being reported in the local and national press. In particular, it made its way into the Illustrated London News, the enormously popular weekly, by way of letter from a correspondent on the footmarks on the snow in Devon. It included additional information. The marks which appeared on the snow, which lay very thinly on the ground at the time, and which were seen on the Friday morning, to all appearances were the perfect impression of a donkey's hoof, the length of 4 inches by 2 inches. But instead of progressing as that animal would have done, or indeed as any other would have done, feet right and left, it appeared that the foot had followed the foot in a single line, the distance from each tread being 8 inches, or rather more, the footmarks in every parish being exactly the same size, and the steps the same length. It's interesting to note here the use of the word footmarks. The word footprints had yet to find its way into the English language. Detection as an art was in its infancy, and the vocabulary. The letter to the Illustrated London News continued. This mysterious visitor generally only passed once down or across each garden or courtyard, and did so in nearly all the houses in many parts of several towns above mentioned, as also in the farms scattered about. This regular track passing in some instances over the roofs of houses and hayricks and very high walls, 114 feet, without displacing the snow on either side, or altering the distance between the feet and passing on as if the wall had not been any impediment. The gardens with high fences or walls and gates locked were equally visited as those open and unprotected. Now, when we consider the distance that must have been gone over to have left these marks, I must say, in almost every garden, on doorsteps, through to the extensive woods of Luscombe, upon commons, in enclosures and farms, the actual progress must have exceeded 100 miles. This act of visiting homes by night also had religious undertones, stirring memories of the plague of the firstborn in Exodus, when God passed from the house to house at midnight, saving only the firstborn sons of Israelites who marked their doors with lamb's blood. For some this and the cloven foot were enough to make the marks of the devil's footprints, but the author of the letter in the Illustrated London News kept his mind on the rational explanation. Birds could not have left these marks, as no bird's feet leaves the impression of a hoof. Or even were there a bird capable of doing so, could it proceed in the direct manner above stated. Nor would birds, even have they donkey's feet, confine themselves to one direct line, but hop here and there. But the nature of the mark at once sets aside its being the track of a bird. The writer of the above has passed a 5 months' winter in the backwoods of Canada, and has much experience in tracking wild animals and birds upon the snow, and can safely say he has never seen a more clearly defined track, or one that appeared to be less altered by the atmosphere than the one in question. He further continued, should you think the above likely to interest your readers, or draw from any of them a better solution of this most singular occurrence than has at present been given, perhaps you will allow it a place in your most interesting journal. This letter sparked a spat of conjecture in the Illustrated London News. Already circulating the Devon towns were theories that the tracks were of a kangaroo, a wolf, or another beast escaped from a traveling menagerie. For the next month, suggestions from correspondents across Europe appeared in the newspapers. Letters to the newspaper from zoologists and naturalists now speculated that it was made by the hind foot of a badger or a great bustard, or somehow by an errant otter or an extraordinary hopping frog. One writer ventured that the footmarks described by your Devon correspondent are made, in my opinion, by the poor, despised, and insignificant rat. Another mischievous contribution claimed that the tracks were those of a uniped, a fabulous and rarely sighted mammal that had been spotted by the Icelandic explorer Bjorn Herjolfsson in Labrador in the year AD 1001. Whatever the case, one other prominent theory that had been tossed about for some years was of the hot air balloon. According to the novelist Geoffrey Household, an experimental balloon produced the devil's footprints. The balloon, kept at the naval base in Devonport Dockyard, somehow got free and set off on a journey across the countryside. The balloon carried 2 shackles on the end of its mooring ropes, and these caused the balloon to continually dip down. It was these shackles, making frequent contact with the snow, that pitted Devon with its trail of curious marks. Household's source was one Major Carter, a local man who'd heard the story from his granddad, an employee at the Devonport base. Carter's grandfather told him that the incident had been hushed up because the balloon had damaged the conservatories and shattered greenhouses and windows. The balloon Of all the theories that have been postulated over the years, including strange weather phenomenon, we're still no closer to the mystery of the devil's footprints. Was it the devil that visited Devon that cold winter? By peering into English folklore, we can see why Devon locals decided the devil had taken a nighttime hike across their county. The single lines of prints suggest a hopping motion, while the clearing of haystacks and high fences indicates spectacular jumps. The devil has long been famous for his hops and leaps. Near Frensham, Surrey, 3 hills known as the Devil's Jumps were apparently created by Satan, kicking up mounds of earth as he bounded across the countryside. The London demon Spring-Heeled Jack, who terrorized the city in Victorian times, was said to leap improbable distances, jump fences, and bound onto rooftops, thanks to springs hidden in his boots. Indeed, some blame Spring-Heeled Jack for the devil's footprints. Our nightmares of leaping devils don't, however, seem to have completely faded, even in modern times. According to an article on the British Paranormal website, in a 2007, a well-respected couple from Shoreham by the Sea, West Sussex, a teacher and businessman, were driving home from the restaurant at about 10 p.m. on an especially dark night. Passing a wood, they became aware of movement in the undergrowth and thought it was a deer. Suddenly, a strange creature leapt from the trees. The couple described it as a cloven-hoofed, very thin and bearded biped. This pan-type figure trotted into the middle of the road, stared at the couple, and unleashed a cry halfway between a tire's screech and a cow's moo. The creature then disappeared back into the wood with a movement like that of a stop-motion figure from an old claymation movie, being both disjointed and angular. The couple saw this character near a gorge called the Devil's Dyke, an area that's been a location of many devil sightings. The articles written by A.L. Kuhn states, "The couple are known personally to me, and they are definitely not the kind of people to indulge in fantasies and then make them known."